so his research has demonstrated for India that there's something else there. But what Beck, this is what we were starting to get into. What Beck did is he went into a bank in Houston, Texas, that wanted to increase its depositors by 50%. And so what he did is he mapped. Literally, he does a map of, this is your level 1 people, your level 2 people are over here, your level 3 people are up here, and he maps the corporation. Then he strategizes the communication and the programs to specifically meet the needs of the people. And so what Judith is saying is correct. Even though we are limited in what we're saying, transformational leadership requires, at the ultimate level, individual consideration requires that you be able to speak these languages and be able to meet the various needs that those people have. We try to stay with the core human needs to be seen, known, and loved, but they absolutely manifest differently, and we have to get back on track. The bank. It succeeded.
So, and we can give you more examples of that, so at another time. So if you are more interested, we can tell you more about that. Let us know. We can give you some other articles and things on that as well. So where are we? Oh, so let's look at the science and neuroscience of engaging. Because what we found also, we also have other research at our Leadership Institute, and we have different levels of leadership related to kinds of things we're talking about right now. But what we found is that the first level we came up with as we were studying leaders and leadership training is that the first thing for leaders to do is to be an engaged team member. To not just try to lead from just authority, but to be engaged for himself or herself, to be a good worker ourselves. To be engaged is really an extremely important part of productivity success. Let me hear some of the studies behind this. And what one of it is just learning, and so many of your educators, so I want to include this, and your students. So we need to learn. This learning is really important. But learning doesn't happen just, and how many of you would like it if you could just put your book under your pillow and you wake up the next day and you learned everything from laying on it? Well, I'd like that too. It doesn't exactly work. But what the neuroscience shows, the only way we learn is when we're conscious, present, we're focused with the intent to learn. And we're stretching, we're kind of, it's hard. It's when it's a little bit hard, you can't quite understand it yet. It's a little outside your grasp. It's not quite that familiar. And it's at that stretching, that kind of moment, we're really engaged with the material, that's when we learn. And they can see that in your brain scans, like, whoa, it's like your brain takes off. Otherwise, how many of you have thought you learned something, you memorized it for a test, and you can't remember it, like the next day or the next week? How many of you can identify with that? So you might have success, that's good, but it's not the pathway, it's not embedded in your brain. So we have to be really engaged in interacting with material and speaking and being curious in order for it to actually register in our own brain. So learning only occurs with intentional engaging. There's other studies which I think are fascinating around engaging too. In the United States particularly, although this is international now, there's a whole new field of psychology called positive psychology. You may have run into that. And instead of looking at what's wrong with the human being, it's looking at how can we be happy? How can we live satisfied lives? How can we have highest potential? And what the studies have shown is that there are 3 elements that make people happy, satisfied, and productive in that way. And it's related to these yearnings. It's having a sense of meaning, which is related to those yearnings. But one of the number ones that, in pleasure, there's a certain amount of being able to engage in life enough so that you can experience it. You can feel the experience of happiness. But one of the ones that's really important, the third one is engaging. Is really interacting with your life, being not just sitting there waiting for life to happen, but it's kind of like, instead of sitting like, you can do right now, instead of sitting like watching us like on the television, if we're, oh, what are they going to say next? What's happening? That kind of engaging makes us not only learn more, it actually makes us happier and more satisfied. Extremely important to our satisfaction. There's other studies in the workplace about this, which I found fascinating, because has anybody here heard of presenteeism? Have you ever heard that word? Do you know what being absent is? Does mean not showing up for work or sick? Well, now they have something they're studying called presenteeism. It's where people are at work, but they're not engaged. They're kind of they're on their Facebook page or something. They're not working. They're kind of in a zone. They're not all there. And what they found is in the United States that represents 61% of lost productivity. And the United States, that's $250 billion a year that's lost just because workers are not engaged, they're not present, they're not participating. And another study related to this is an employee satisfaction. They found that the employees that are the happiest, the most productive, the most satisfied, are actively and consciously engaged. And what the study showed that meant is that they're curious, they're asking questions, they want to learn things, they ask for extra work, they take risks, they come up with new solutions to things, they speak up in meetings, they stay late, they interact with one another. They're much more actively engaged in their work, and they're much more productive, more satisfied, and they're happier. Other studies, these are so fascinating, so many, they call these studies grit. I don't know what that would be translate for you, but grit means being able to persevere, to stay with something, not give up. And those people that actually, what they found is one of the biggest, in fact, there was a longitudinal study that they did with Harvard men who went to Harvard in the 1930s. And they studied them over 70 years. And John Kennedy was one of the people that they studied. So they took these men and they were trying to see what's going to happen with these men in their lives. Who's going to be the happiest? Who will be the most successful? What happens over time? And what they found is many things they found in this, but what they found is